The high velocity rounds one is
very good, yes.
Pretty crazy.
It's
so that's,
crazy, yeah.
Think of it like a kind of infinite impale.
So I wanted to abuse this exact combo to the absolute maximum. With this, we need to do as many hits as possible during the Shattered Armor uptime, which actually is 5 seconds. I went and checked their VOD. It's exactly 5 seconds. And we need to hit as often as possible to re-trigger the 5% of physical damage dealt from the high velocity round. So basically, we need to hit 20 times to generate an additional form of high velocity rounds damage. And we are going to do this by using the high velocity rounds first and foremost to basically shatter the armor. And then I thought we are going to be using the cluster grenades, because the cluster grenades, if we go here in game, you can see that we're going to shoot 3 primary grenades that are then going to explode into 14 each mini grenades. But this is actually going to be buffed in 0.3. We are going to spawn not 14 mini grenades, we are going to spawn 18, which inevitably increases the amount of hits on a target, which then proc the 5% damage of the high velocity rounds. So that's basically the base idea. As you can see right here though, a problem of cluster grenade is that it has a cooldown. Now, the cooldown is not going to be a problem overall because we do have various ways to reduce it. First of all, we have Ingenuity, which already decreases the cooldown right here to 7.7 seconds. And then we also have cooldown recovery here on the tree. This might not even be needed, because what we're also going to do is we're going to put the cluster grenades into totems. And the good thing about totems is that we can just resummon them after they have casted the cluster grenade once. We can also go the route of just decreasing the cooldown overall, so that the mortar cannons are going to be casting the cluster grenades very often. Because if we take a look at the patch notes again, for the mortar cannon, you can see that they come with significantly improved cooldown recovery rate for these socketed grenade skills. So that's basically the idea. We're going to be using 5 mortar cannons. They all shoot the cluster grenades. Then you shoot your high velocity rounds. You apply the Shattered Armor debuff, and then every single hit from our cluster grenades are going to proc the Shattered Armor debuff. And now let's actually have a look how this is going to math out. I've sat down and calculated the number of hits that we can expect. Obviously, as you can see right here, the grenades are spreading out a little bit, which we actually have a very cool fix for, which is hidden in the Chinese leaked support gems. We can actually do very cool things to our cluster grenades, but to the more to that later during the video. So I have calculated the amount of attack damage that we can expect with a very minimum approach. So everything is kind of like halved, or even we are only using a third, but let's get into it. So we do have, after the patch, we have 18 cluster grenade total hits per cluster grenade. If we factor in the initial explosion of the primary grenade, we could even bump this up to 19. So let's this is something where it's like a little bit less than normal. So we are going to have a total of 5 nades that we're going to be shooting, because we have Scattershot giving us +2. We will have cluster bombs on the tree, which is going to be right here for an additional projectile. And we're going to be using the siege crossbow with the +1 grenade implicit. This makes it so that we have 90 total attack hits per cluster grenade. Now, we do have 5 totems that are going to be placed, because we're going to take all of the totem nodes and we're going to go for double totems and so on. So this gives us 450 single hits that would in theory all proc the 5% of the high velocity round damage. But as you saw, we do have a very high spread of the grenades. This was already with conk effect, but as I said, there is going to be a super cool thing we can do later on to reduce this spread even further. But let's just say 33% of those 450 single damage instances are going to hit the boss. Then we have a 5-second uptime of the Impale. I have gone into the video and calculated this and watched this exactly. It's exactly 5 seconds. And then we are going to be shooting, our mortar is going to be shooting 1 second after being summoned, which I also went and checked in the video. This makes it so that we can get a little, basically 1.5 rounds of cluster grenades from our mortars during the 5-second debuff or shattered armor uptime. Basically, a couple of cluster grenades can be fired before we apply the debuff, which makes it so that this specific mortar is only going to shoot once. But some of them are obviously going to shoot exactly twice during our 5-second window of damage. So I went and calculated around 1.5 rounds of clusters per impale window. This makes the previous 148.5 hits to 222.75. And then on top of that, we also get the payload support plus the repeating explosives. So as you can see right here on the skill tree, we do have a 15% chance to activate the grenades a second time. And we also have payload, which gives it a 50% chance to activate a second time. Now, the cooldown recovery rate, we actually have to see if this is going to stick or not. We are going to min-max this a little bit further and then actually see how it's going to end up to just see if we have the necessary cooldown recovery rate to get 2 procs into it. But as I said previously, we might not even need the high cooldown recovery because we're just going to resummon the totems, basically resetting the cooldown recovery for free. So this together is going to increase our total number of hits by 65%. So now we are at 367. And again, this is basically calculated at the minimum of the whole calculation, right? So we're not like over exaggerating it at all. So this would mean that these 367 hits would basically be an additional number of 18.37 high velocity round instances of damage triggered through the shattered armor buff. This comes down to 26,260 attack damage, basically every 5 seconds during the impale window. And then on top of that, we have not even calculated the single cluster grenade damage. We can also add +1 cluster grenade by putting this into our Mirage Archer. Then we can also put other grenades into our Mirage Archer. And then we can maybe play around with even putting other grenades in our Mortar Cannon, which then might add even more hits, right? Then we can see if we can also self-cast the fragmentation rounds during the impale window. And now at the very bottom comes one extremely important thing. If you think that I am not going to hit 33% of the hits onto the boss. Here you can see the spread is actually pretty big, and I've went ahead and I've seen that I'm always hitting 6 times no matter where the boss is. I would be hitting 6 times. Obviously, if you aim correctly, you would be able to not make the boss stand here where nothing explodes. But very important is the adhesive grenades. Here you can see that the level 2 makes it so that the supported grenade skills remain at their initial landing spot, which you can see if I go here into my adhesive test is actually a huge difference in spread. This is the very first contact point on the ground for the cluster grenades, and this is them basically just before exploding. So as you can see right here, this is going to make the spread way tighter, which then obviously makes it so that we're going to hit way more often. So if we were to increase the cooldown reduction of our mortar cannons, or we make sure that we continuously recycle and recast the mortar cannons, and we make sure that we get 2 rounds of clusters per impale window. So all of them are going to be casting twice in those 5 seconds. Then we are going to have 35,000 attack damage. And obviously, the biggest damage multiplier is the number of hits that we get onto the boss. And I don't even think that hitting with 66% of our total attacks in those 5 seconds is unrealistic because of the concentrated effect and because of the adhesive grenades. I actually think we can easily get over those 66% of all hits hitting the boss, but in that case we would be dealing 70,000 attack damage every 5 seconds. And again, this is not factoring in the cluster grenade damage, another Mirage Archer, which is going to add another set of cluster grenades, which can also payload and repeat in explosives, and other grenades in Mirage Archer, other grenades in mortar cannons, and maybe self-casting fragmentation rounds. So this is legitimately just the damage that we do by summoning 5 totems, applying the high velocity rounds, and then going AFK, right? This is legitimately just that portion of damage. Obviously, this can be tinkered with and increased. As I said before, I'm gonna be basically aiming for this minimal point of the band, so to speak. So that's a single target explained. For the AoE or the clear or trash mobs, however you call those, we are going to make it much easier. Namely, we are going to be running around and just placing down our mortar cannons that are then going to cast the cluster grenades for us. I'm gonna place a mortar cannon and I keep running. I'm gonna place a mortar cannon and I keep running. That is legitimately how the clear is going to look like, where we are just going to be running towards our objective, leaving the mortar cannons behind us or even placing them in front of us because they are going to start shooting our cluster grenades for us. We legitimately just play a walking simulator while everything behind or even in front of us is going to explode. This is going to be amplified by the Warbringer Ascendancy, which brings me to a point of why Warbringer. As you can see right here, we are going to have the Answered Call, which is going to give us +1 totem as well. And we're going to have Ancestral Spirits. These are not only adding additional hits to our calculation right here that I completely disregarded, but on top of that, they also give us buffs like increased attack damage, increased defenses, stuff like that. Then on top of that, we basically have 20% of damage from hits is taken from nearest totems all of the time because we're always near totems. And on the other hand, we are going to be able to break armor equal to 10% of hit damage dealt, which is going to come in extremely handy in combination with the armor explosion for our clear, which is then going to break the armor on a target through the cluster grenade damage and is then going to trigger the armor explosion for more AoE. That is going to be amplified by the last node on Warbringer right here, which then makes it so that we can break enemy armor to below 0. Currently, we don't know if imploding impacts actually works well because there have been some calculation mistakes. I hope this is going to be fixed, but in theory, this should not only improve our AoE damage tremendously, but our main source of damage also in single target, which again is absolutely not factored in to the calculation right here. So there's tons of stuff that is not in here that is going to increase this portion of damage. And then again, if we hit 66% of the shrapnels or the mini grenades into the boss, then the damage obviously goes up tremendously. So there you can see how low I chose the band to be. And then on top of that, we also have a new node, which is the Molten One's Gift, which increases the effect of fully broken armor by 15%. And on top of that, the fully broken armor effects now also apply to the fire damage taken from hits, which is then going to buff our cluster grenades even more. You can see that I have pathed to this one already. It's going to be here, which is also going to have some more armor break nodes, which means we can probably get rid of stuff like this and improve the pathing. Now, gameplay wise, as I said, legitimately just running around, placing the mortar cannons and going to the next pack. I've already created a max roll planner to kind of like collect all of my ideas and reminders. I would not really call this a full planner yet. This is really just an outline of ideas that I have. You can see the very starting stages of the passive tree, which is certainly going to get overhauled, because not only do we get the new one, but also there's going to be some stuff changed. So we are going to probably change this one a lot. But what we can kind of already think about is how we're going to buff the high velocity rounds, because this is our main source of damage on the boss. We are going to juice the high velocity rounds as much as we can. So we have stuff like heft, deliberation, and so on and so forth. Again, the supports are probably going to change from the patch notes, so I have to adjust them probably anyway. Then we're going to have the cluster grenades, which are only going to be a 5-link because we need to put them into the mortar cannon. We're going to do stuff like scattershot, expedite, armor explosion, conk effect. As I said, we will have the adhesive grenades, we will have the mortar cannons. We're going to flip some stuff around anyway. Maybe we don't even need the the expedite. We will have to see how the detonation time is going to feel, but the armor explosion is actually going to help out in the clear of the build. Then on top of that, very important, the emergency reload, which is going to give our high velocity rounds a 31% multi, and then with premeditation, another 15% more multi, which basically means we can add around 33% damage or so to the base high velocity rounds damage, which is then obviously going to increase the overall damage that we're dealing. But as you can see, I did not do this to kind of like stay at the lowest possible amount of damage that we're going to be dealing. And yeah, that's basically the explanation of the build. I'm going to be starting the Totem Cluster Blaster. The planner is going to be linked down in the description below. I'm going to be covering, I'm going to be iterating on this. I'm going to be covering the day 1 update, the day 2 update, the day 3 update, basically taking this thing all the way and fixing all the little kinks and obstacles that might occur on the way. I'm going to be live doing this basically right now when you see the video, so definitely make sure to check out the Twitch. And if you like content similar to this, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time.